Welcome to Human Rights Policing, Week 12. We have another special topic this week to keep things interesting for you, I believe. This week, we're going to talk about human rights versus broken windows policing. First, a few words on last week. Your discussion board was on the age of mass incarceration and the prison industrial complex in the United States, and we looked specifically at the documentary 13th Amendment. Quite an eye-opening documentary for a lot of people who um, have not been previously exposed to what made the United States the largest penal colony uh, that the world has ever known, and what led to the United States becoming the leading country in the age of mass incarceration to lock up human beings in cages, often for non-violent offenses. Um, so instead of making a lot of comments on the discussion post this week, I sent comments to each one of you individually, extensive comments and feedback. So make sure that you have read the comments and feedback that I sent to each one of you individually when posting your grade. Uh, Nonetheless, um, the documentary tells us a lot about the relationship between race and the criminal justice system here in the United States. That ultimately, any group of people that has caused problems for the power elite has been criminalized. Uh, people, if you think about it, people who have fought for civil rights, environmental rights, women's rights, animal rights, gay, lesbian, transgendered rights, they've all been subject to police scrutiny whenever human beings protest against wars or uh, they fight for the rights of other beings. They fight against cruelty. They fight against for labor unions. It's the police that come in and crack your skulls, put them in chains, and throw them into cages. The last place we'll ever see justice in the world is in the criminal justice system of the United States, where justice is basically completely lacking. We can see how the government and its politicians collude with the media and mainstream journalists to create moral panics and folk devils who serve as social pariahs that are blamed for structural problems. Um, and so these human beings get scapegoated and they get blamed and they can become the focus of police scrutiny and anger in the popular imagination. Of course, when they have nothing to do with the great structural problems that we face as a society. And so it's important to look at how the media and the government collude to manufacture consent to propagate their ideas and their beliefs so that we, the masses, we agree with their orthodoxy. We agree with their thoughts and their beliefs and their values. And so we become, for lack of a better word, brainwashed, propagandized, uh, where we believe in the ideology of our master ruling class, and we accept their representation of reality and we deny our own. And so when we believe in the propaganda that our politicians and media give us, when they successfully manufacture the consent of the masses, we lose our ability to think independently, autonomously, and critically about the world. And certainly taking humans and locking them in cages for nonviolent offenses has been normalized in our society. This barbaric act of cruelty, this grotesque violation of human rights has become normalized in our society and even celebrated and cheered upon. And of course, the criminal justice system does not keep any of us safe. It does not give us any justice or peace. It does nothing for human rights, but rather the criminal justice system and its policing in the United States is here to uphold class inequality, is to protect the opulent, the powerful, the master class, the corporate oligarchy. Um, it's to serve as a tool of oppression against the American people, the working classes, all of those with jobs. It's used as a tool that the powerful use as class warfare against us. And so it has become obvious. We can even see with the social policies that are created, like the manufactured war on drugs, which uh, doesn't happen very often, where politicians, like Nixon's advisor, admit to the truth behind the war on drugs. It was manufactured, it was created. There was no drug problem. It was used to murder, kill, assassinate, and terrorize the Black community. Just like the police and the criminal injustice system of the United States has been used to terrorize, imprison, and violate the human rights of all people that have ever stood for anything: animal rights, environmental rights, women's rights, gay and lesbian, transgender rights, the right to unionize and organize freely, uh, and to attack people protesting against all of the criminal wars that the United States has engaged in for the past few decades. Probably one of the greatest acts of terror in the history of the 20th century. It's probably the Vietnam War. And so we can see then that the criminal justice system is a tool that the opulent use to wage class warfare against the American people. And if that we want to create or take any steps towards creating a justice, criminal justice system, um, we need to decriminalize all drugs. Again, that war on drugs has been used to assassinate and terrorize anyone that stands up against power. And so, uh, drug addiction should have always been treated as a health issue, not a criminal issue. Human beings shouldn't be put in prison for nonviolent offenses. And so there's a whole big movement even to abolish the uh, criminal justice system in the United States and thereby end the age of mass incarceration, and to actually create a criminal justice system focused on human rights in our society, something that's almost completely lacking. So again, I made a lot of comments to each one of you individually with my feedback. So hopefully you read all of that. And so this week, again, we're talking about human rights versus broken windows policing. Obviously, y'all know now what we mean by human rights policing. We read the whole book on that. Um, and ultimately, the idea is to transform policing from an institution of social control into a human rights organization that protects the human rights of the people, of the masses, especially the most vulnerable in society. And so, um, I have you look at broken windows policing, and basically, I have articles there for you to read. Um, like, for example, broken windows policing gave rise to a Scorpion unit that killed Tyree Nichols. And so, um, as the name suggests, broken windows is the idea of going after very small, insignificant offenses. And if you can go after and target um, low level offenses, loitering, panhandling, underage drinking, and have the police just giving everybody tickets and putting people in jail for minor offenses, it'll prevent the larger offenses from occurring in those areas, uh, in those communities. And so I've given you some articles both for and against broken windows, certainly enough for you to be able to see the arguments on both sides and to weigh the merits of both sides of the argument. Um, and also just to look at, how broken windows developed, what gave rise to broken windows, strategy, policing, and so uh, your job is to kind of read that, and then look at the critiques and then come up with your own type of argument. I also have a YouTube video on a 14-year-old kid in New York who was harassed by the police. The idea of stop and frisk policing, which is part of the get tough on policing strategy, is to identify where there are high crime rates in an area, and then to send a brigade or a dosage of police to those areas to stop and frisk everybody that they see. Of course, a lot of people would argue, um, perhaps with good reason, that this is a violation of our constitutional rights. In fact, when I was a teacher, while I was going to graduate school in New York, I was a teacher in Brownsville, Brooklyn, where Mike Tyson learned how to fight. There, I taught at the juvenile jail in Brooklyn. In one of the high schools in Brownsville, Brooklyn, um, they had a football team that would get out of football practice about 5 or 6 o'clock every day. But those students, those high school students, were harassed and terrorized by the police in their own community, put up against a wall, frisked, thrown to the ground, cuffed. Of course, they didn't do anything wrong. They're just coming home from football practice. But they had so much harassment from the police that the football coaches told all the players in this largely black and Afro-Caribbean neighborhood, other players to come home with their football helmets on. That way, the police would know they were coming from football practice, and they wouldn't have to be harassed and abused by the police every single day. And that's how bad it got. And this is how bad it stop and frisk got in a lot of black and brown neighborhoods in New York and throughout all of the United States. Of course, some of my conservative brothers and sisters would argue that stop and frisk is effective, but if you think about it, UWL students, I know a few of the dispatchers here at UWL. Some are actually students and interns, and they tell me that uh, UWL students from time to time in the dorms will smoke marijuana and drink beer underage, which tells me then that there's many UWL students that are criminals and that are engaged in crime. And so maybe we need to send a brigade of police on UWL campus, and we need to have the police throw you to the ground. We need to have the police cuff you. We need the police throw you up against a wall, fondle your body, touch you, and frisk you, ask you a lot of questions, check your bag, check your person to see if you have any marijuana on you or alcohol in your breath. And maybe, if we believe so much in stop and frisk, it should happen to students at UWL. It should happen in your communities. It should happen in your neighborhood. And of course, most of us don't want that. We don't want to be stopped and frisked. And so if we don't want to be stopped and frisked in our communities, in our university, in our schools, and in our cultural milieu, we shouldn't wish that upon other communities as well, who are already subject to over police scrutiny and have to deal with police problems in their community. And so, like the Brownsville community, where the kids had to put on football helmets in order to not get harassed by the police. It gets a little tiring after a while. And so, um, nonetheless, but there's still good arguments that can be made for get tough on policing strategies and broken windows. If you go to Singapore, for example, there's very little crime, um, and there's a ton amount of social control, cameras, surveillance. I mean, not as much surveillance as American citizens, because American citizens are the most surveilled population to ever exist in all of human history. No country has violated the privacy of its own citizens more than the United States. But we are the most pictured, photographed, fingerprinted, and surveilled population in all of human history. Um, so Singapore does some of the same thing, and through these draconian measures, they are able to almost reduce crime. Um, and so anyhow, I think it's important that we critique and we debate and we argue each other for the purposes of finding creative ways to better our society, to create human rights in our society, and to have all of our institutions focus on human rights. And one can make an argument that we need to get tough on policing strategies to improve human rights in our society. So again, feel free to argue for either human rights or broken window style policing. Just put on that sociological imagination, be critical, be thoughtful, be imaginative, and I think that'll be nice. So I have the article for you to read. Broken Windows Policing gave rise to Scorpion Unit that killed Tyree Nichols. I have the Stop and Frisk video, and then I have a whole bunch of other articles that I put on the discussion board for you so you can become familiar with broken windows and to become a little bit familiar with both strategies of human rights, broken windows, stop and frisk, and know the arguments on both sides. So hopefully that you can make your own argument. So I very much look forward to reading what y'all post. on the discussion board. Keep it interesting, keep it exciting. Y'all are doing a great job. Love this class, and keep up the good work. And again, keep it critical, keep it thoughtful, and see you all on the discussion post. Thank you very much. Take care.